As the NBA fantasy season goes on from week 1 to week 24, there's going to be a lot of changes from week to week. We have injuries that pop up, amount of games being played, matchups, so many things change, and that's why we make our weekly rankings every single week. Welcome back to Stu's Fantasy Corner, your #1 destination for everything related to fantasy basketball, and today we are going over the top 25 guard rankings for week 2. The NBA season is officially underway, and that means the chase for a fantasy championship has officially begun. Over the next 24 weeks, we are all grinding toward the same goal, raising that trophy in April, and every single lineup change that we have, every single waiver pickup, every single matchup decision matters from here on out. Each week, these rankings will take into account 4 main factors: the player's matchup, their momentum and recent form, any injury updates regarding their team or themselves, and the number of games they play out that week. It's a complete guide designed to help you navigate the ups and downs of a long fantasy season. Whether you play in a sleeper league, points leagues, or categories format, these rankings will give you a clear edge week to week. This list focuses specifically on the top 25 guards in fantasy basketball based on ESPN standard points heading into this week. So let's get right into the ranking. So Luka Doncic sits firmly as the #1 guard in fantasy basketball right now, and that's not changing anytime soon. His week 2 schedule sets up perfectly. There's no back-to-backs, plenty of rest between each game, and the matchups against softer defenses that struggle to contain elite ball handlers. Expect efficient scoring, strong assist numbers, and consistent fantasy output all week long. Luka should continue to anchor your lineup without any hesitation at all. Next up, we have Shai, and his week 2 schedule is a little bit tougher than usual. The Thunder have a back-to-back that includes travel to start off the week, which can wear down even elite players. And as I'm saying this, I just watched this man drop a 55-point game against the Pacers, so even with that back-to-back, I think he's still going to go out there and ball out. The positive, though, is that OKC plays again on Sunday, which is the holy day in fantasy basketball, if you don't know, and Shai should be fresh after 2 days off leading into that game. That final matchup lines up big for a huge performance to close out the week. Expect some uneven output early because of the travel, but a strong finish that should more than make up for it. Next up, we have Donovan Mitchell. He opened up the season on fire, and that momentum looks set to continue in week 2. The Cavs have a favorable stretch ahead, facing some of the weaker teams in the East. Opponents that can stay competitive but don't highly have the defensive firepower to slow down an elite scorer like Mitchell. Expect consistent production across the board and another strong scoring week as the Cavs and Mitch handle business against softer matchups all week long. And to round out the S-tier guards that we have in the league right now, Tyrese Maxey might have the best schedule of any guard this week. He's set to face the Wizards and the Nets, 2 teams with some of the weakest backcourt defenses in the league. Both matchups give him plenty of room to attack off the dribble and push the pace in transition. With how aggressive he's been to start off the season, this is the perfect setup for multiple breakout scoring nights. Add in a Sunday game to close out the week, and Maxey looks primed for one of the strongest fantasy performances of week 2. Moving down to the next tier, we have Anthony Edwards, and he has a 3-game slate this week, which is one of the reasons why he's now in the S tier, and it's not an easy one on top of that. The matchups are tough, but Minnesota is going to need him to carry the offense if they want to come out of this week on the right side of an even record. Expect some mixed results early, but he's too talented to stay quiet for long. Saturday's matchup against the Hornets stands out as his best opportunity to break out. Charlotte's defense has struggled to contain dynamic scorers, so look for Edwards to put up a big performance to close out the week strong. 2, Glock Ja Morant benefits from a 4-game schedule this week, which normally locks him into the elite territory. However, he slides down into the A tier this week because of a lingering knee issue that popped up after the game on Wednesday, and some tougher matchups on the slate as well. There's a chance he could miss a game or 2 for a precautionary rest so early in the season. If he's still active and moving well, his upside remains undeniable. He has the potential to turn into an S tier this week, but with the combination of volume, pace, and explosiveness, keep an eye on the injury reports, but if he's playing, you start him with confidence. RJ Barrett gets a very nice scheduling boost this week with 4 games, but the matchups themselves aren't doing him any favors. He opens up against the Spurs and faces the Rockets, Cavaliers, and the Grizzlies all that week, all teams with solid perimeter defenders and physical wings. It's the kind of stretch that could lead to some inconsistent shooting nights. Still, with the volume he gets in the minutes he plays, he'll have plenty of opportunities to produce, especially in transition or attacking mismatches. Expect steady counting stats, but don't count on big efficiency from RJ Barrett this week. Talking about this one, so it hurts the soul a little bit. Jimmy Butler has been outstanding since joining the Golden State Warriors after the trade deadline last year, and that momentum has clearly carried into the season as well. His efficiency, his defense, and ability to impact the game on both ends of the court makes him a reliable fantasy option week in and week out. Honestly, it's hard to argue against him being an S tier based on performance alone. The only thing keeping him in this A tier this week is the hierarchy that they have in Golden State. With Steph Curry still running the show, Jimmy's ceiling is slightly capped at the moment. Still expect strong all-around production and elite efficiency from Jimmy throughout the week. Steph finds himself in a very similar situation to Jimmy like I just mentioned. The Warriors are playing a more balanced, starless style of basketball over in Golden State right now, where everyone contributes and the offense flows through constant movement rather than pure isolation. Even though Steph is still the clear leader of the team, Jimmy often reaps the rewards of that system, cutting, spotting up, and capitalizing on the defensive attention that Steph draws by his presence. The good news is Golden State's schedule this week is one of the softer ones, setting both players up for an efficient, high production outings. If things go as expected, the Warriors could easily finish the week 4-0, and both Steph and Jimmy should deliver consistent top-tier fantasy value all week. Cade Cunningham just misses the B tier this week. He's a talented young guard with clear upside, but his streaky play makes him hard to trust in tougher stretches like the one the Pistons have coming up this week. The Pistons only play 3 games, and all of them come against strong defensive teams that know how to limit elite ball handlers. Cunningham's playmaking will always give him a fantasy floor, but if his shot is not falling, it could be a rough scoring week for him. Expect solid assist numbers, but don't count on elite efficiency or high volume points in this slate. LaMelo Ball is set up for a massive week of production, the type of stretch that could easily remind everyone why he's still a top fantasy guard when healthy. He's got great matchups across the first 3 games, and those should be full of highlight level performances with big scoring and assist numbers. The only reason he's not sitting in the S tier this week is the back-to-back at the end of the schedule, which could limit his minutes or even silent him for 1 game. Still expect a dominant stretch overall, capped off by what should be a passing clinic against Utah to close out the week. Moving into the B tier, we have Scottie Barnes, who continues to be the heartbeat of the Raptors. He's easily their most talented player on the roster, but one who still runs hot and cold from week to week. He just missed cracking the A tier this time, largely for the same reasons as RJ Barrett. 4 games on the schedule, but a tough set of defensive matchups that could limit efficiency. Still, Barnes has the versatility to contribute across multiple categories, even with his shot isn't falling. Wednesday's matchup against the Rockets, though, stands out as a big opportunity. Their defense struggles to contain athletic forwards, so expect a strong all-around performance from Scottie in that game. Davion Mitchell is probably the biggest wild card that we have on this list. Coming out of college, I was high on his game, and at the time, I thought the Kings made the right call moving Halliburton to give Mitchell more room to develop, but it just never really clicked or worked out in Sacramento. Since joining Miami, though, it's been a complete different story. He looks confident, composed, and ready to contribute in a real way to the team. His first game this year with the Heat was a breakout performance, and I'm watching closely to see if that carries over. With matchups this week against the Hornets and the Lakers, 2 teams not exactly known for great defense right now, Mitchell has a legitimate shot to keep the streak going and to solidify himself as a fantasy relevant guard. Mikal Bridges might be the 3rd option in New York's offense, but he's clearly the #1 fantasy guard on that roster right now. His efficiency, durability, and ability to fill up multiple stat categories makes him one of the safest plays week after week. The only thing keeping him out of the S tier is purely just volume. If he had more consistent scoring opportunities, he'd be right there with the other elite names in the fantasy game. The Knicks only have 3 games this week, which is terrible for fantasy output, but they get that viable Sunday matchup, which gives him a great chance to close out the week with a strong performance and swing fantasy matchups in your favor. Next, we have another Miami Heat guard with Norman Powell. He has stepped up to be the Heat's #1 scorer option right now, with Tyler Hero sideline and Bam Adebayo struggling to get the offense moving in a positive direction. Powell has become Miami's go-to guy on the perimeter. He's always had that spark plug ability, instant offense whenever he touches the ball, and now he's going to get the green light to let it fly in Miami. This expanded role makes him a strong fantasy play heading into week 2. Sunday's matchup against the Lakers should be a showcase game for him, and it could easily turn into a week-winning performance if he keeps this momentum going. Derek White has become the de facto leader in Boston with Jason Tatum sidelined, and there's no clear alpha right now in that offense, and just a collection of strong, really strong role players trying to fill the gap, and that dynamic really showed in their loss to Philly. White's steady play and versatility makes him the glue holding things together, and you can expect him to contribute across the board this week, with points, assists, rebounds, and defensive stats, all while maintaining his visual efficiency. He's not flashy, but he's one of those players who quietly keeps your fantasy lineup balanced and productive. Brandon Miller is shaping up to be the ultimate year 3 breakout player. With LaMelo Ball healthy and commanding attention, Miller slides just a notch below him in the offensive hierarchy, but that's exactly what's allowing him to thrive in this offense. He's picking his spots better, shooting efficiently, and showing real confidence as a scorer. Sunday's matchup against the Jazz feels like the perfect stage for a breakout performance. Their defense has struggled on the perimeter, and Miller's size and shot creation gave him a clear advantage. Expect the game to be a statement outing, one that could easily swing the week in favor of anyone who has him rostered. Jaylen Brown is a tough player to rank this week. I'm not huge on him or his game. On paper, he's got a great setup with 4 games. That kind of volume always helps, but the matchups themselves are pretty brutal. 3 of those opponents are among the better defensive teams in the league, and historically, Brown tends to struggle with efficiency in those types of situations. He'll still get his points, but don't be surprised if the shooting percentages dip a little bit this week. With how the schedule lines up, I would actually expect a bigger fantasy weeks from guys like Simons and Derek White. They've got cleaner matchups and more consistent offensive roles heading into the slate, making them safer plays for week 2. Austin Reeves is another player that was a little bit hard to grade if he was either a C tier or a B tier. Even with LeBron out of the lineup, he is still solid. There's still that hope he makes the jump into the A territory soon, but right now the situation around him is just holding him back. Luka is doing every single thing for this team, and the rest of the supporting cast just isn't really pulling their weight, which limits Reeves' ceiling just a little bit, but still his versatility keeps him valuable. He's that true Swiss Army knife who can score, facilitate, and rebound efficiently. Sunday's matchup against Miami sets up nicely for him since we kind of struggle with perimeter defense, and he should carve them up while smart playmaking and off-ball movement. Expect another steady all-around performance from Reeves to close out the week. Now into the C tier, and these players, again, these aren't bad players. These are the top 25 players of guards. So all these players are going to be solid or good players, but players that can need a little bit of love or a little bit of help to really reach that breakout level for the week. And first up, we have VJ. VJ showed some real promise earlier in the week, and while this video is being recorded on Friday night, so I don't yet know how he performed on Saturday, if he keeps going at the pace like he did on Wednesday, he's going to climb the rankings fast. He's got 4 games this week, which always help with his fantasy outlook, but being the 3rd scoring option on his team and still just a rookie, I'm trying to keep my expectations in check and low for now. I don't want to get too excited, but with that being said, he plays on a championship Sunday, and that alone makes him an intriguing player to watch. If he stays consistent, VJ could be one of those late week difference makers who quietly wins you the matchup. Next is Cason Wallace, who is currently signed on with a knee injury, and with the Thunder opening up the week on a back-to-back, it's highly unlikely he suits up for both of those games since he's already dealing with an injury, and that's even if he plays at all, because right now he's still being sidelined. That alone takes a big chunk out of his short-term fantasy value. When healthy, he's a solid streaming option, especially with J-Dub being out for the foreseeable future, but he's far from a lock. His production depends heavily on minutes and opportunity, and both could be inconsistent with the current rotation that's going on in OKC. Keep him on your watch list for now, but don't hesitate to pivot if there's a more reliable waiver option available. Next is Keyshawn George. He came out firing in game 1 of the season, but it's a very long year, and consistency is what really matters in fantasy. For now, he sits in the lower tier among guards until we see those strong numbers carry over into multiple games. The good news is the Wizards have a favorable setup this week with 3 games total, with 2 of them coming against teams that give up plenty of points to guards. If Keyshawn can build on that hot start and stay aggressive, he could rise up the ratings really quickly, but for now, he's more of a watch list or deep league play than a weekly lock. Stephon Castle looks like every single bit of the reigning rookie of the year to start off the season. He stepped into his role with confidence and aggression, picking up right where he left off. He's been attacking the rim, defending at a high level, and showing why he's such a key piece for San Antonio's future. That being said, this is still Wemby's team, and Castle's fantasy ceiling is naturally capped because of the hierarchy. With only a 3-game schedule this week, it's tough to see him cracking the top 25 again in total fantasy points for guards. He'll still be efficient and productive when he's on the floor, but volume alone keeps him just outside the upper tier for now. Trey Jones opened the season strong, showing great composure and efficiency, but his shot volume is going to take a hit with the emergence of both Uzelis and Giddey in Chicago's rotation. The Bulls have 4 games on the schedule this week, which helps his overall fantasy outlook, but the scoring opportunities just won't be as plentiful. Expect solid early week contributions with assists, steals, and efficient shooting before things tighten up toward the late end of the week. Especially in that matchup against the Knicks' tough perimeter defense, he's a steady play for deeper leagues, but not someone likely to crack the top 25 this week. Keontae George closes out our top 25 rankings, and he's got a real shot to climb higher if he keeps his pace up. The Jazz look sharp in game 1 of the season, but there are still some lingering questions about their offensive consistency, mainly whether their key scorers can sustain that early success. With Collier's sideline, George has stepped into a larger role as both a playmaker and a scorer, and it's starting to pay off. Utah has 4 games this week, including 2 against Phoenix, which should both turn into high-scoring matchups. If George continues to push the tempo and stay aggressive, he's got a legitimate chance to sneak into the top 20 by week's end. And that's going to be my ranking for the top 25 guards heading into week 2. If you get any of these players on your roster, expect some pretty big performances from them throughout the week. And for those who are in lock-in leagues like Sleeper, make sure you're paying attention to those matchups because they're very, very important. That's going to be all for me today. Thanks again for stopping by the corner. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.